Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. I am Aishwarya Reddy, founder and CEO of Kenshu, and today I have the honor of sitting together with Maharani Saiba Rashmi Rajalakshmi Banj Dio from the Royal State of Mayurbhanj. Thank you so much, Maharani Saiba, for having me here and giving me this opportunity to, have this conversation with you. So I have to mention this, Maharani Saiba. So yesterday when, I traveled for almost 12 hours because we decided to, take the flight to Bhubaneswar and then drive down here. It was a long day, lot of stressful calls and everything. So we were just in like a whole different, say, energy space mentally. And I remember we just arrived here and drove down the driveway. And as I was just driving down the driveway, I was just looking around. I wound down the window of the car, and I feel like my energy shifted. I don't know what it was, but I had like goosebumps at one point in a positive way, and I was like, okay, you need to slow down and calm down and relax and just enjoy being here, because you don't get this often in a fast paced life, because we're always doing the one thing after the other thing. We're doing multiple tasks at once. I feel we miss the whole beauty of doing one thing and enjoying that task truly. So I felt that there was some energy shift in here. Have you got that before?
Yes, I've heard it from a lot of our guests also, that they have very good sleeps over here and their system is much calmer over here. But I think in the olden days, maybe the other homes also, but the royal homes were made on points which were Vastu compliant. A lot of things were taken into consideration, because first of all the royal household set in and then the cities around it developed. So I think they saw to a lot of Vastu, the vibrations of the place, because that's where the ruler is going to be, and the kind of vibrations he gives out to the people will also be in the same frame of mind. So I think because of that, some of the old houses, and that is why sometimes you see the families may disappear but the homes remain. Like you see even in lots of places, the forts and the places are still existing. How come the families have all gone? Maybe there are not so many people living there, but those things still exist, because I think they were made with a lot of good intention, and maybe not always for the family living in it, but for the people around it. So because that would be their safe space. If ever they needed anything, they knew which family to go to or whom to ask for help. So I think a lot of good thought, a lot of good vibrations, a lot of prayers. Like I feel over here we have a DT over here which has also been established, Mangalama. So we all consider ourselves like a custodian of this house. Me and my children, we never say we are the owners of the house. We are the custodians of the house, and we are just doing what she would want us to do, kind of thing. So pardon me by saying, but I really feel you cannot enter this place if she doesn't permit you. I think we ourselves cannot live in this house if she does not permit us. For years we were away from the home, and it's only like after my mother-in-law's 90th birthday that we permanently moved back. But before that, I somehow feel she just didn't want us here. Yeah. She wanted that, we are living in cities and children are going out for studies and everything. And then imagine my children, they studied in America, the younger two, then they worked in New York, both of them for 1 year, and then they came right back here. So I believe in that truly, that only people she permits can come here. Even the staff whom she will want can stay here, others will not survive, however good you are. That's my personal feeling. So that's why I think you are here today, because I think she wanted you all to be here. And I was also going to tell you the fact that you all attended the evening aarti. I've had so many guests who come who want to go to the temple, but they always say, now morning we couldn't get up, evening we were out and we missed the aarti. But you guys came in and you all managed to do darshan in the evening itself, So there has to be some connect to.
We walked out at the aarti bells and I was like, I know I want to go there, I want to go see Devi Ma. I felt that.
Right.
So Maharani Saiba, what's the history behind this beautiful yellow color? I feel like it immediately caught my attention as soon as I came in.
So basically earlier they used to use, to get the yellow color, they used to use organic turmeric.
Haldi.
So it was basically disinfectant also, and also they used to say nazar nahi lagegi. So earlier all the old homes used to have this yellow color. And so earlier our color was white, but then we decided to get the yellow color into the house, because we also felt that, you know, the detailing comes out much better if there is a two-tone color to it.
Yeah.
So that's why we decided
Wow.
to do the yellow.
So Maharani Saiba, do you practice any special rituals to cleanse the aura of the space? Because I also noticed that the space has a lot of positive energy.
So basically we collect a lot of resin from the Simlipal forest, and we burn it over the charcoal, and that juna, we call it, the smoke is given first to our deity over here and then taken around the house.
And it smells so good.
It does, because it's 100% natural.
Natural.
Yeah.
Maharani Saiba, when I walked in and looked at all the pictures and the photographs, I noticed that all of you are very fashionably forward, even, you know, most of the ancestors. Where did it come from?
I think the women mainly, I think my generation, I would say, from my mother and my mother-in-law. My mother, though she grew up in Rajasthan, so we still had a lot of parda system, so like we had to have your head covered and everything. But my mother-in-law, she came from Nepal, and mama was very fashionable, and like the way she carried herself, she would never use too much makeup, but she was always well done. I don't think she ever met anybody without her, you know, she was, unless she was fully ready, and lipstick and eyeliner and things like that. So I think my children must have got it from my mother-in-law.
Yeah, I see so many like fashionable photographs, and not even a single, like, you know, hair out of place. It's so perfect, and I was like in awe just looking at all the photographs and like looking at all the details and
Right.
everything. I see a lot of furniture pieces. Are these something that has been passed on through generation and restored?
Yes, all the furniture that you see over here is very old and antique. It's just been refurnished or just polished and put.
Maharani Saiba, is there one interesting piece you uncovered during the restoration of this project? Something that holds value, something that's interesting, something passed on?
So firstly, I think the crystals, definitely the collection that we have, and they were in many more colors, but each of my sister-in-law was given one full set of the various colors of the crystals, and there's a big story behind it. So one of my grandfather's older brother, Maharaj Sri Purna Chandra Bhanjdev, he happened to be in London, and he had a little dusky complexion, and there was a Christie's auction going on. So he walked into the auction, and the manager who was there told him that I don't think, you know, you should be here, because this is not going to be something that an Indian can afford. And he was casually dressed and all. So he walked out, and then he went and got his checkbook, and then he asked for the owner of the auction and met him through his secretary. And then he said, I'm just buying everything. He gave him a blank check and said, you can put in any amount that you want, but I'm going to pick up each and every crystal that is here.
And they do look beautiful.
Yeah, so that's how we inherited all those crystals from the Christie's auction. And he did it not to spite the Britisher, but just to tell him that don't underestimate a person by his color or from where he comes from. You never know who could be the, you know, a buyer for anything that is there.
One piece from the palace restoration that you think you will pass on to the next generation?
So we have a Chinese chest over here, and it used to earlier hold a lot of fabric, I think, that had been bought from China, and because of the wood that has been used in it, it would never catch any kind of insects or anything. So that it was airtight, but still, you know, it could stay for a very long time. And also it had like a secret shelf below, which would only open once you shifted some panels of the wood around it. Then that thing could open. So I think it was a very old piece, and that is something I think is not available now in the market,
Yeah.
and so would definitely like to pass it
A
on.
secret wooden
Absolutely.
compartment,
Yeah.
wow. Some pieces aren't just created, but they are inherited into a space. And for Mayurbhanj royal family and the Belgravia Palace, we have created something deeply personal, something that speaks of the royal family's heritage. This is a hand-tufted carpet where every thread is carefully placed to build not just a pattern but presence. At the center sits their monogram, not printed, not embossed, but woven into the story of the piece. Because in a place like this, it is not just decor, but a continuation of legacy. At Kenshu, we don't just create products, we create a legacy that you can pass on through generations and cherish for the years to come. And sometimes the most modern luxury is something that's made just for you. So I had such amazing sleep last night, and I woke up early in the morning, went for a stroll. I ended up at a lake, and it was just so calming, beautiful. What's the history of like the palace, Belgariya Palace's name? Like, how did it come?
So
come
basically, there were a lot of bale trees over here, so that's why the first name bale. And then Gadiya means a water body.
Oh, I
and
never
because
knew.
we have a lake attached to the property, so that's why the name Belgadiya was given to it.
I couldn't believe that it's 200 plus years old when I walked in, almost 1800 century. So it was the palace was built in 1800
Right.
century, and I feel like I've not been to too many say places, that are this old. And I feel like, yeah, there is some energy of its own that the place carries, a charm of its own. It's seen so much. So when you first walked into the palace, what was your first, say, impression of it? Were you overwhelmed? What did you feel like when you was it excitement? Was it awe? Were you awestruck? What did you feel just walking into the palace?
So-
You must be newly married then.
Yeah, a lot of awe definitely, because Rajasthan doesn't have this kind of structure. We have generally stone structures. So the palace was beautiful, and more than that was the responsibility that comes with it. So even though I walked into the house as a new bride, but you do feel responsible that okay, now this is the legacy that I have to take forward, kind of thing. And it is sometimes a little what should I say, little weight on your shoulders also, because then there is a lot that has to be done. What has first to carry forward what is already being done, and to create awareness for the new things, because like any traditional things also to be carried forward, but can be with a little twist of modernization, so that it is more practical for today's world. So I think there is a lot of work that takes it goes into you to continue with legacies of this kind of homes.
And I think you've done a very good job in withholding this responsibility, and I feel including a lot of like new activities and like new, say, newer culture around it. I also see a lot of relevance of the Puri Jagannath temple and the temple here in Mayurbhanj. Can you tell me about the backstory? Because I know about it, but I really want to know it from you personally.
So one of our forefathers, I think it was Maharaj Bednath Bhanjdev, he had travelled to Puri and he wanted to do darshan, but because that time the distance was a lot, so he travelled with his army, and the Gajpati then did not allow him permission to come inside because he thought they might evade the country, and so he was not given the permission, so he waited outside. Again he sent words, and then finally the Gajpati said, you can come but alone. So he said, but I've come with all these people and we are not come to fight, we just want to do darshan and leave. But Gajpati was not convinced, and he said, I cannot go alone because all these people have also come, and for any Uriya person, Jagannath Mahaprabhu is considered actually a Mahaprabhu, and he's whatever god you may follow, but he's considered the person who's looking after all of us. So he said, how can I just leave my army people behind? And then so he stayed, he put his camp there, and they waited for 15 days, but Gajpati was not ready to give them entry. And then finally he threatened him also. He said, look, if you want I can have war and I can enter, but I don't want to shed blood on this pious land, so please allow me. But he wouldn't. So then he prayed to Lord Jagannath and he said, now I've come all this way and you're not even giving darshan to me, so what am I supposed to do? So then he came in his dreams, they say, Mahaprabhu Jagannath, and he told him, you go back to Mayurbhanj and I'll tell you where you make a temple for me, and one prahar in the day I will be there.
Every 1 hour, 1 hour every day.
1 hour every day, one prahar. So he came back, and that's how our Jagannath temple came into being, and it is called the Dvitya Swarna Khetra. That means it's the second equal to that. And so then during that time it was that the people of Mayurbhanj don't need to travel to Puri for darshan, because you just do darshan over here at the for Mahaprabhu.
How interesting. So Maharani Saiba, I know you did grow up in Jaisalmer. It's a beautiful city. So how was early years growing up before you got married and moved to Mayurbhanj?
So Jaisalmer was very different climate and everything. And basically, I went to study in Ajmer. So most of my school years were in a hostel because there weren't very good schools in Jaisalmer. But I also really never appreciated the architecture and all till I went to school. And then I used to come back home and I used to see so many foreigners coming. And I remember as a child even asking one foreigner that, why are you taking pictures of my house? Like, don't you have homes? And he said, you have no idea how beautiful your home is. And that time we used to have a lot of French tourists who used to come to Jaisalmer. So that was I used to wonder, what is so beautiful about my home. But today when I see, you're away from your home, and as you've grown up, you realize the kind of workmanship that went into, making those houses. And they were so different because they were stone houses made out of lime with a lot of Arabic influence, because we had a lot of inlay work or the jali work which is done on stone, and it was so difficult to create. But then today I also appreciate the fact that our forefathers used so many artisans. There were so many artisans, and then the art was handed down generations, and till today the work is going on, and so many people's livelihood is based on making these the kind of stones and jharokhas and things like that. Some of it even getting exported now from Jaisalmer. So I think when you lived in a condition which was such harsh conditions, and there weren't very many methods of livelihood, I think architecture also played a very important role over there, because it gave livelihood to a lot of artisans. And because we used to hardly get any rains that time. In my growing years, there used to be maybe 6-7 years sometimes when the rainfall used to not happen. So even the agriculture was very limited. So I think art and craft and architecture both really help people, because they would remove the hair from the sheep or the camel hair, and they would make these shawls called pattu, and that was being sold. So basically art and craft and architecture both became a big amount of livelihood for the people over there.
And I think you grew up around it also.
Yeah, so I truly have a lot of appreciation. I remember whenever our relatives used to come there, we used to always gift them those kind of things. It was not anything in glassware or something like that. It used to be always something which is locally grown over there and made over there, which was gifted to the people. So actually each family or each town became its own ambassador for the craft, and they themselves were showcasing the craft, because then it would travel to wherever the guest had come from and things, and appreciation for that stuff was always there.
Did you feel anything culturally different from, say, growing up in Rajasthan, moving to Orissa, starting a new
yes,
life
a lot.
here? Did you find any difference?
Absolutely. I think first of all was the weather, because it's so humid and all over here, and the food was also very different over here. Language was also, because I have hardly traveled to Bengal or this side. I'd only gone to Jamshedpur a number of times for basketball from my school side, but I could not understand the language. But I think to my advantage, the staff over here never spoke Hindi that time. So you were forced to speak or try and understand what they are trying to speak. And so I picked up the Odia language. Food was also very different from what I was used to eating in Rajasthan. But because my mother-in-law was from Nepal, and also my mother's from Nepal, so a bit of the Nepalese cuisine was there. So that was like something which I appreciated over here. But things were really very different compared to this thing. But I saw that there was so much greenery over here. There is so much that the people can do. Over here we have, inside the Mayurbhanj district itself, we have like 32 languages being spoken. There are 32 dialects which the tribals speak over here. The Odia that I speak is just one of them. I don't even understand the other dialects. So they are so rich in culture and even crafts, but I think they don't have the exposure that the Rajasthan government has given its artisans. And I think that is where these people are lacking, that if they got the same kind of exposure, they would also definitely do much better.
Because even when we came in yesterday and just looked around, took a palace tour, watched the chow dance, we were so impressed. We were like, why is this not being represented anywhere? Why don't I see reels being made of this?
Correct.
Because there's so much content that's being consumed today, and I feel like somewhere everything is not being showcased.
Right.
So it was just like mind blown by the various craft that there is here, and just the people are so, you know, sweet and nice. And even the ladies who helped me like wear my sari today were speaking in local Odia language, and they were just so like kind. You know, I saw a lot of like, say, warm hospitality here. So definitely a place, you know, that I'd want to come back and explore much in depth as well.
Right.
And I do know both of your daughters were, you know, the leading hand in, you know, restoring the palace. They've done a beautiful job. How did you convince the family into?
So my mother-in-law was not happy to open the place because she just didn't want unwanted, unknown people walking into the house. But then my girls, you know, we did up the house. We did up in the sense just the painting or the wallpaper. Some of the bathrooms were redone because they were the old style. Besides that, major breaks, we didn't break any walls and things like that. But after her birthday was over, and we wanted to do it for her 90th birthday, so we could call all her relatives here. And after that, we thought, now what? You know, now the whole palace is done up and it's been opened, and all the rooms have been opened, furniture has been put properly, so let's do something about it. And it was my youngest daughter's idea that our forefathers have done so much for Mayurbhanj and for the state of Orissa. Now it is our time to give to the society. So let us open the palace and create a platform where we can support our local artisans, primarily the Sabai grass workers, the Dokra artists and the Chow dancers, which was also like a dying art form. And then whatever money we generate from the guests who stay here, we've created a trust through which we are supporting our local artisans. So that's how then Bilgaria Palace came into being as a hotel, and by God's grace, I think we've got a very good response and it is doing well, and we are able to showcase, you know, our local people, the art and culture to the world.
So Maharani Sahiba, I also know Mayurbhanj was the air base during the World War II. Can you tell me more?
So during the World War II, we already had an air base here much before that, made during the erstwhile time, and it was Asia's second largest air base also. It was called Amarda, and my own grandfather, older brother and younger brother also fought in the World War II. They were fighter pilots, and these guns were also used during the World War II.
Maharani Sahiba, you must tell me about the story of this crocodile, because I think it looks extremely interesting.
So these crocodiles, they were found in the Simlipals. They were called the estuary crocodiles. They were around 20 to 21 feet in length, and they became man-eaters. So they had eaten a lot of villagers who were coming to the riverside to pick up water, and that's why they were shot. And then from inside the stomach, all those jewelry came out of the villagers.
I can't imagine toe rings and bangles coming out of a crocodile.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Maharani Sahiba, for giving me this opportunity. I feel like I could never, like, you know, stop having a conversation with you. You have so much to share, but it was such a lovely, say, 2 days spending my time here, knowing so much about the history of Mayurbhanj, the palace, and all the artisans you're supporting, and just, say, soaking in the aura of this place. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya, for being here, and I hope in future somewhere, you know, with the Mayurbhanj textiles or the Sabai grass or the Dokra, we could work together, and that would be great.
I'm so looking forward to it. Thank you so much.